Hello YouTube, it's time for another walk and talk video. This time I'm coming to you from Inokashira Koen in Kichijoji, a part of Tokyo located in the towards the western edge of the city. I just filmed a walking video through the central parks of this area, but now I decided to make this park walk a walk and talk video. And today I'm going to talk about how living in Japan has changed me. One of you asked about that. I think the exact question was, have living in Japan changed you in a positive way? And I think it's a really good question. And I will probably expand to it and also include some negative aspects of it. But it has definitely changed me. Before coming here, I was, I guess, very Swedish or very European in my mindset, and I had only lived in Sweden and Germany, a short while in Berlin before moving to Japan. But after coming here, I think I quite quickly adjusted myself to some parts of the Japanese culture, the parts of the culture that I think are very positive and something that is worth adapting yourself to. So I think perhaps the most important and the biggest change is that I've started to be much more mindful about the people around me. Like back in Europe, and the European mentality is to kind of think mostly about yourself and don't really pay that much attention to people around you, which is very obvious when you, for example, ride a bus or a train back home and the person next to you is listening to some music without headphones on their phone, for example. Like things like that would never happen here in Japan. Here it's very, very important to, just show respect and make sure that you don't cause anyone around you unnecessary discomfort. And that's, for example, one of the reasons why people here never talk on the phone while riding the subway. Like, it's not like speaking on the phone is forbidden. It's more like something that you shouldn't do, and people will kind of give you a weird look if you do it. So sometimes if you're on the train and someone's calling you and you know that it's an important call that you need to take, then you see people do that quite often, and what they do is they look very, very ashamed, and they usually speak with a very low voice, and in my case I would probably jump off the train at the next station and just wait until I've finished talking before boarding a new one. Whereas, back in Europe, people just talk very loudly about everything, and it's almost like the other passengers aren't there to them. So that's a big difference. Another big difference on a similar note is that you also try to, even if a space is very crowded, you kind of do what you can to accommodate others and not bump into them unnecessarily. As always, the wind starts picking up as soon as I hit record. Sorry about that. But so that kind of goes hand in hand with what I just told you, that you don't want to cause any discomfort to other people. So, if the train is really crowded and someone's trying to squeeze on the train, then most people do what they can to accommodate this new passenger and make a little extra space so that he or she can get on board. So things like that. I think that's a pretty big difference. And whenever I go back to Europe and I see how people behave there, it really, I almost feel like physical discomfort by watching how selfish people can be back home. So I really think the entire world should learn a little bit from Japan and be a bit more mindful about not causing inconvenience to other people. That being said, of course, this is also something that I sometimes feel that people here do a little bit too much. Like, for example, I sometimes notice that people are very they don't let children speak up at all, and as soon as they open their mouth on the train, the parents just tell them to be quiet, even if it's they just want to have a kind of normal, healthy conversation. So in some ways, I mean, not everything is great about this aspect of the Japanese culture. Also, like, people really, I mean, I often feel that people here can kind of downplay their own needs and desires a little bit too much in order to try to not, be a burden or be, cause any trouble to anyone else. So it goes both ways. But on the whole, I feel that despite the fact that Japan and Tokyo is such a crowded place, I feel that people here are usually very nice and kind and show respect to each other. So that's definitely something that have changed, starting to picking up this kind of aspect of the culture as well. Another thing that has changed is that I've started bowing, because bowing is something that you often see Japanese people do, and it's now it's so ingrained in my own behavior that even when I'm back in Sweden, I sometimes, after buying something at the supermarket, I notice that I'm actually bowing slightly to the person working there, which probably looks very weird and strange from a Swedish perspective. But small things like that is definitely something that you unconsciously start picking up after living here for a while. Another thing that has changed from living here is that my English has changed. I don't know if you've noticed that, but sometimes I use words that are like Japanese English. So in another video, I, for example, said something about buying a McDonald's set, which someone commented and asked what's a McDonald's set, and a set is actually the Japanese word for a meal. So you say, for example, a lunch set or a morning set. That's a lunch meal or a lunch or a morning meal, or breakfast maybe it's called. So there's lots of things like that, like many small words that have a slightly different meaning in Japanese, even though it's English words, but they mean something else than what they do to many native English speakers. And sometimes that also happens just unconsciously. Like, I'm so used to speaking to Japanese people, and I kind of adjust my choice of words to make it as easy to understand as possible to Japanese people, even though that often leads to actually not speaking proper, correct English. So that's a bit of a negative aspect of living here. I don't know if it's the same for native speakers, maybe not, but in my case I've definitely noticed that my English has adjusted itself to become more compatible with the average Japanese person's English language skill. So that's a bit problematic. This park is so nice. So other things that has changed, well, here in Japan also people are in general very careful about how they look and like the exterior of things. Like it both applies to yourself, but also, like, for example, the wrapping if you're giving someone a gift, like the importance of having a neat and tidy exterior is it's very high here, much more so than back in Europe and Scandinavia. So that's also something that has affected me a lot. I care much more about having, neat and tidy clothes, or no holes in my socks or in my shoes, things like that. I wouldn't really care much about before I moved here, but now those things are getting more important to me as well. So that's another aspect of the Japanese culture, that you gradually adapt to it, and then it's kind of very difficult to let go of small habits like that. So I also care much more about having, I don't know, that to cut my hair regularly, which was something that I was pretty lazy with before I moved here. Sometimes I let it grow so long that it was always, looked very wild and not so nice, not so tidy. But these days I go to the hairdresser much more frequently, and I just care more about having a neat and proper appearance. So that's it, I think, in terms of how my behavior has changed. Oh, one more thing, the hygiene as well is the level. Like, people here care very much about you always wash your hands before a meal. Like, in Japanese restaurants, you always get a little wet tissue before you get the food. And when I go to restaurants in Europe and I don't get one of these tissues, I feel that it's really, really gross and disgusting, and it's impossible for me to start eating before unless I go to the bathroom beforehand, so I can wash my hands there. And just in general, like, always making sure that your hands are clean, and before you eat anything, even if you just buy like an ice cream or something, you often can get a small wet tissue like that. So just eating something without wiping my hands first suddenly feels extremely disgusting and unhygienic. So that's another part of this culture that I've adapted to 100%. But I think that's all I can think of for now. And as always, if you have any further questions, or if there's anything else you want to know, please don't hesitate to write a comment. And by the way, I just passed 20,000 subscribers this morning, which is insane. And I'm just, once again, I just want to say that I'm so thankful and grateful to all of you who find my channel interesting. And I really appreciate every one of you, and every insightful comment that you write or question you ask always makes me really happy and grateful. So please keep those coming. That's all for now. Thank you so much. Bye.